So my name is Patrick Heller. I'm a professor of sociology and international affairs at Brown University in the United States, and I'm here at Los Andes to give some talks. And the talk I gave this morning was entitled The Age of Reaction. And as a scholar, as a sociologist who's long been interested in democratization in the global South, this is a period of great concern. We've seen across the world the rise of right-wing ethno-nationalist movements, and in particular the literature is focused a lot on the rise of Trump in the United States and of anti-immigrant parties in Europe. But we've also seen a similar phenomenon in some of the global South, and in particular the two cases that I'm interested in looking at more closely and comparing, namely India and Brazil. So last year, Jair Bolsonaro was elected as president of Brazil. It was a bit of a dramatic and surprise outcome. He is, in every sense of the term, a right-wing populist with some very strong authoritarian trends. And this is quite alarming in a country that over the last 30 years had made so much progress in terms of consolidating and deepening its democracy. And similarly, Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister of India, has been re-elected for a second term just recently in May at the head of the BJP party. And the BJP party is a party that primarily has been pushing for a redefinition of the Indian nation as a Hindu nation, what's known as Hindutva in India. And also has some fairly pronounced authoritarian tendencies. And so the big interesting comparative question is, why now, and why do these reactions, that is the rise of these right-wing populist ethno-nationalist politicians, how can we explain this across two countries that otherwise seem to be so different? So I think in both cases what we have are elite reactions by the dominant groups in Brazil and South Africa, namely the upper classes, but also big chunks of the middle class, to what is best described as a democratic upsurge over the last 2 decades. So in the case of India, beginning in the 80s, middle caste groups started mobilizing on their own terms. They started challenging the dominance of traditional political parties, which were heavily dominated by upper caste groups, and eventually this led to two consecutive 5-year governments in India called the UPA, the United Progressive Alliance, led by the Indian Congress Party, pushing an agenda of beginning to build a welfare state and explicitly using the language of social rights in doing so. Similarly, in Brazil, after the military regime of '85, there's a series of presidents, but finally it all sort of consolidates around Lula coming to power at the head of the PT, the Workers' Party, and essentially pushing a project of also expanding social rights and expanding the role of the welfare state and reducing poverty and providing services and generally uplifting the popular sectors. And that in both cases, this really eventually reached a point where it presented a significant threat to the traditional economic position, but also the traditional social privileges and status of elite groups, that at a moment of crisis and at these moments of political elections, produced coalitions that are coalitions essentially of reaction. And these are coalitions that have rallied around a defense of the middle class and of excluding the popular sectors from social benefits. And there are trends in these new populist regimes that are directly challenging democratic institutions, and in particular challenging the very strong role that civil society has played in the last 20, 30 years in strengthening democracy. So there's cause for great concern, but hopefully through some careful comparisons we can learn some lessons and bring light to bear on this complex set of questions.